Are you ready?
Ready? No, my name's Brandon.
All right, well, let's talk about the number one comedy movie of the year.
Right, which is Happy Gilmore 2, now streaming on Netflix. The 2 hour, $40 million movie featuring Adam Sandler, and like 85% of the runtime is just cameos.
Sounds like you just reviewed the whole thing. So that's our review of Happy Gilmore. Moving on to the actual number one comedy of the year, The Naked Gun. And this is where we got to remember it's The Naked Gun. We always have, you and I both mess this up all the time. The original's Naked Gun. This is The Naked Gun. Um, but yeah, I know too. Netflix is gonna be like, "Oh, it's the biggest." Whatever. Like they'll just start doing their jerk off stats about it. But you know what kills me is that its opening weekend, and I don't even remember what the other movie was called. Its opening weekend performance on Netflix didn't even match the opening weekend for that like Jamie Foxx straight to streaming movie that came out like earlier this year, apparently. Whatever that was called, apparently did bigger numbers than Happy Gilmore too. So that goes to show you the state of people that watch streaming, apparently.
Which is crazy because like they went pretty hard with marketing Happy Gilmore 2, at least with the cross collaborations and promotions like the Subway collectible cup set and like the billboards in Los Angeles
Is that
where
where that came from?
yeah, Subway, because there's a Subway ad where it's like a kilometer down the road from a Happy Gilmore on Netflix ad, and it's him hitting the ball out of the ad, and then the ball is lodged in a Subway sandwich in the ad, like physically down the road from that.
Oh,
So
jeez.
it's kind of wild that Netflix put effort into promoting the movie, and I guess hoping it brings in new people because yeah, it's not like you have a box office weekend to deal with. So
Well, that's why
uh,
streaming is such an enigma to me because, like, I would have bet The Farm that this movie would have done like huge numbers for them, and they're in like whatever they report, it's all self-reported basically. But
well,
the
yeah, because
fact
even
that
like
it didn't beat out whatever, like again, I don't even know the name of the movie. Like I've never heard anyone talk about it. I need to
here,
pull it up because it's gonna
yeah,
drive
look it
me
up.
nuts.
Because what I was gonna say too is like we went to Fantasia and we saw that movie Life
Back in
Hack
action.
back in action. Oh, with is Cameron Diaz in that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I remember seeing a trailer
It's
somewhere.
got a
Maybe.
30% on the tomato meter. I never heard of it until like I watch I've talked about him before, Dan Murrell's YouTube channel. He does a box office report every week and he touches on the streaming stuff. And so when he said that Back in Action outperformed Happy Gilmore 2, I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it, but for the
Yeah, that's
cultural
insane.
landmark Back in Action that I've literally never heard of until that moment. So
Yeah, I thought people were
fuck
clamoring for
Netflix,
a
dude.
legacy sequel of Happy Gilmore, just the same way that they were clamoring for a War of the Worlds with Ice Cube. Like we just saw Life Hack, which is like a screen life movie. You know, everything takes place on a computer screen, and everyone that's watching the new War of the Worlds like War of the Worlds with Ice Cube. That's got to be at least funny, right? But it's like him sitting in a chair reading the script while they animate, everything that's happening, and it's terrible. But all the comments are like, bro literally just sits at his computer the whole movie. How is this entertaining? And all I wanted to say is like, go watch Life Hack, go to Fantasia,
Yeah.
go see better movies because streaming is kind of a dumping ground sometimes. But it boggles me that the War of the Worlds ends up on streaming and has like a whole bunch of people talking about it because it's so bad. I mean, it's like Life Hack could have ended up on Amazon Prime and been like talked about at least in a positive way or had better impact for people looking to watch something at night. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're in a weird time. And speaking of weird times, I guess let's talk about a 2025 comedy in theaters right now, The Naked Gun.
Yeah, I'll start off by saying in terms of the high level thing, I I ultimately did fall positive on the movie, and I think it's kind of through the nature of these kinds of movies. For anyone that's not seen, there's three Naked Gun movies before this. That all starred Leslie Nielsen, Canadian by the way, and it's also based on a TV show was before the movies came out called Police Squad, and it was in the exact same vein of these kind of like parodies of these police procedurals that were really big on TV at the time. And it's in the vein of Airplane, if you've seen that. It's the spoof movie, and that kind of thing. And I adore the original movie. I adore the TV show that it's based on. I was absolutely not looking forward to this when I heard it was announced. I was like, "Oh my fuck." Like I love them so much, and I was just like absolutely like so uninterested. And then I saw like clips and clips. The clips started winning me over a little bit. I'm like, "Okay, like they do understand like the bit, like they're not doing some like completely, kind of different thing. It is kind of still trying to be true to the spirit of the movie." So I went in hopeful but skeptical, and ultimately I came out again slightly positive. Like I did have enough fun with it that I can recommend it. And like these are the kinds of movies that the hit rate on jokes is really what makes or breaks it. It's 85 minutes long, and it just peppers you with joke after joke after joke after joke. And so if one of the jokes doesn't land for you, it doesn't matter, because 4 seconds later there will be another joke that might land. And so even if like there's comedies where they like do a big build and a huge punchline and it doesn't work, and then you're kind of left with like 5 minute gap between that, and you're just kind of like, oh, that wasn't really funny, and you marinate in that. But this doesn't give you any time to marinate in anything you don't find funny. So it's just kind of a hit parade of gag after gag and joke after joke. So it does get a recommend from me on the kind of spoiler free level. But yeah, easy one to recommend, I think.
I am jealous too because I feel like you got to watch this twice before we got a chance to officially talk about it. And like you were saying, when we left the theater on my first viewing, your second, you were like, "There's so many bits that were so like it's a hit parade so quick that they went over your head, not because they weren't like good, but just because it was subtle, because it was in between two bigger jokes. Like when you
Yeah.
talk about investigating a car crash, and like the big joke at the end of it is there's a pinball claw machine type thing taking
Yeah.
this car out of the water, not like a crane or a normal thing. It's like a bunch of men operating it, and they're like, "Oh, like that's like the obvious like rock smasher laugh, haha, funny joke." But in the middle of that, like, yeah, he's taking his glove off or to put the glove on to get like evidence, and he ends up scratching his nose with that and using his like dirty hand to pick it up. It's just like
Yeah.
I didn't even see that. I'm telling you what you told me that you noticed, but yeah, it's again like you said, it follows the spirit. Like we watched a couple episodes of Police Squad before going to see this. And even watching that was a palate cleanser. Like the way the comedy's done in like a very like matter of fact, just say the joke and move on kind of way. Even like the little bit at the start of this where it's like that was referencing like you said like cigar, and he goes, "Ham cigar," and he goes, "Yes, those are cigars,"
Hmm.
and like just very almost like dumb comedy, but it really works. I think it gets the spirit of the Police Squad movies and or the Naked Gun movies from Police Squad. I got it. But yeah, I think like you said, it stays really faithful to the way they set up bits and the way they do it. Without spoiling anything, but talking like generally speaking, this is Seth MacFarlane's Naked Gun reboot, and I think mostly for the better.
Well, hold on. He produces it. I like
He didn't
he is the
direct it.
producer. Yeah, he didn't direct, and I don't actually know. I think Akiva was the credited writer too, wasn't he?
I think he
I think there was a
might have a
few of
credit in
them.
it. When you Google Seth MacFarlane Naked Gun, it is talked about as Seth MacFarlane's Naked Gun because immediately when leaving, I had said to you, I was like, yeah, I felt like the Seth MacFarlane kind of charm in this, where there's a lot of love and dated references that they've worked in a way that makes people maybe like look something up after or like appreciate what they're
Well, this is
referencing.
like a Tim Burton situation, like for
Corpse Bride or
Nightmare on Elm Street, Nightmare Before Christmas, where
right.
like they have that because yeah. So Akiva Schaffer, who is one of the three guys of the Lonely Island or whatever. But he was the director, and then there was he also wrote it with Dan Greger and Doug Mann. So McFarlane isn't even a credited writer on it. He just produced it.
Interesting, yeah, because we both said like and at least I was saying I feel it for the better. Like there's some like a borderline cutaway gag that's framed like a montage, and there's some really dated references. Mostly landing for me being like a 30-year-old guy, but I don't know how Gen Zs are gonna love it. We'll get into deeper dives on these exact topics, but yeah, there's at least one reference in it that felt like really like shoehorned in that I felt like if they kept more with that police squad formula where they weren't like well, I guess I shouldn't say that because like they do have reference humor in that police squad episode we watched where they're like, this is this super old famous actress's like movies and they're using it to stop
Mhm.
bullets or whatever. So I guess like there was always reference humor, but some of it didn't fully land for me. But yeah, general thoughts. I'd say everyone should go out and see it if they can. Like, yeah, I know we're in a recession, but it's a really funny movie. I think you're going to find something to laugh at. I don't think anybody's walking out of this movie like utterly offended, which is good for a comedy. You'd almost want me to say people are going to leave so offended to get people to go to see it. Like South
Yeah.
Park style, like crassness, where it's like it's so wildly offensive you should go see it for yourself. Yeah, it's overall like kind of middle of the road, but it's very like charming. It feels like a Naked Gun movie. It's probably the best adaptation of that material they could do in the modern landscape. Like I was saying about offensiveness and whatever. Like I think it rides the line. It's pretty good. I know at work, I've been talking to my coworkers about it, and I would just be saying bits, and they'd be like, "Oh, I gotta go see that." And it reminds me of like memes where it's like, there's a meme about memes where it's like, I'm so online. There's a meme about memes where it's like, what did guys do before sending each other 1,000 memes on Instagram every day do? And then the tweet reply was like, bro would literally just hit you with the same 3 or 4 quotes from Anchorman, and that was enough. Now we have all this media to enjoy, and yeah, this is definitely a funny, quotable movie for a lot of it. Yeah, without giving away every single bit. Yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts. Really enjoyed it. Liam Neeson in place of Leslie Nielsen.
Mhm.
That hit me like yesterday. I was talking to a coworker. They're like, "Oh, that's the guy who replaced the guy." And then I said Liam Neeson instead of Leslie Nielsen, and it like tongue twister exploded in my mouth.
Yeah.
I was like, I get it now. It's not because he's like 6'7" and handsome like for an old guy. It's because the names are like almost like what is that called? Like when a writer has like a name where they mix up their words. Like in 23, it's top secrets.
Yeah.
But like an anagram. It feels like an anagram where
Yeah.
they switched out their names around. So Liam Neeson for Leslie Nielsen. It's like I'm
Hard.
supposed to be good at talking about movies, but here I am. So yeah. Do
Well,
you want to
just
kind of get
I
into this?
think before we dive in, I think just to give people a sense if they've never seen or heard of it, like it is kind of just rapid fire dumb comedy, like generally, but it's like dumb comedy is like it's just bits, it's gags, it's like little things like that where they're characters that are doing absurd, silly things, but they play it completely straight. And so
Yeah.
that's really where the kind of comedy and the charm of this comes from. And like on a kind of base level, like I wish in a perfect world, this to me wouldn't be based on old IP. It would be something a little newer and more original in that regard. But I think it's a kind of studio comedy like that Paramount really did get behind, and I think, like I said, it's one of those things like you don't get enough of those in theaters, and like we open the whole thing with like the streaming stuff and like comedies are so much better enjoyed with people and like if you sit at home something you're like huh, but if I'm there and if we're all there and you have a big group and everyone is laughing, like it just builds up that energy. And like the fact that comedies have been relegated effectively in the last 5+ years to streaming is really shitty. And I'm like, it was fun. Like our crowd, when we went in like the afternoon, I think. So it was like a less ideal time to go. But my,
Still like
like,
40, 50 people in like
yeah,
a
decent
hundred
number,
person
but
screen. Like,
but
yeah.
yeah, I would say that like the crowd was definitely more of a dud than when I got to see it the first time, where people were really into it. So like again, it's kind of a testament to like going out and seeing it early and stuff like that too when you get the chance. By the time this comes out, it's been out for a bit, but I still like bring a friend and go see it, and you will have a good time. It's an easy movie to have a good time with,
Yeah,
for sure.
when you say a dud, I should clarify. Like normally we always end our podcast talking about like the do's and don'ts or like etiquette in the theater. Weirdly enough, I found like the crowd we saw it with was kind of doing what I was doing, and I think it's like psychosomatic. Like everyone was doing this. There's no laugh out loud people. There's laugh out loud jokes, but I was like internally like wheezing, like like laughing at these jokes because I didn't want to be the only guy busting a laugh. I think there was twice where I did where I was like ha like audibly
Yeah.
loud and enjoying it, which we'll get to in the spoiler half. But yeah, yeah, the you definitely want to enjoy the movie, laugh at the jokes. It's kind of like seeing a stand-up comedian. That's the difference between streaming. I know you and I watch a lot of stand-up, and when you watch a streaming episode of a comedian, like it's good. But then if you ever see them live, you're like, this is way better when there's a
Yeah.
cathartic 300-400 person laugh track with you. And I mean, that's why sitcoms used to do add the laugh track in because it makes the viewer at home laugh, you know? So we talked about before, again, going off the deep end here. We talked about playing the joke straight. If there's one thing I could praise it for on the straightness of these jokes, is like the example of not playing the joke straight is what we've come to call quippy Marvel movie humor, where it's like, "Hi, I'm Doctor Strange. I'm Spider-Man. Oh, we're using our real names. Well, so that just happened."
Yeah.
There's no "so that just happened" moment, and in 2025, that's increasingly rare. I was reading an article about how cringe is the last authentic thing we have in the monoculture where that doesn't really exist, where we're not consuming the same media anymore. Everything's so niche, but cringe shines through, and it's nice to see a
Mhm.
movie that just trusts its bits. And again, even if you do find a bit cringe or not laugh worthy, the next bit might land, and it's one after another, and it's like, yeah, I couldn't get behind it more. It's a breath of fresh air in the comedy landscape where all of our action comedies are just superhero movies.
Mhm.
When you talked about like Police Squad lampooning the police procedurals that were really big in like the 70s and 80s, um, the equivalent now would be superhero genre stuff, but even parodying it is tiring because we already have The Boys,
Mhm.
and it doesn't really lend itself as well to having like those very deadpan jokes the way, again, like a film noir police detective story would be, So, yeah, I think the movie landed far more than it missed for me, and I recommend it to almost everybody I've talked to. I've even explicitly said, don't wait for streaming. Like, I think you'll
Mhm.
get more bang for buck if you have to spend $9 on a Tuesday to go see it with your family. Uh, Preferably that over renting it for $20 on digital or waiting a year and a half for it to come out on a decent streaming service for free. So yeah, let's
Well, yeah, it almost feels dumb to describe like, oh, now we're into the spoiler part of the the Naked Gun. Like the plot is so irrelevant, which we'll get into, but we will talk about like specific gags and stuff. So like genuinely, if you have not seen this, stop the video now, go back, watch it, and then come back and hear us talk about it because there is specific things that we'll talk about there. But like the plot is so irrelevant to the whole the whole thing that it doesn't really matter, to the point where like the whole opening kind of scene is him stealing a device called the plot device and all of this, and like
the
that's like
PLOT
one of the
device.
yeah, that's one of the opening kind of gags with it. And like I guess where I want to start is kind of digging in a bit more on like my reservation about like a reboot for this and all of that. Like Airplane and Naked Gun are so like iconically tied to Leslie Nielsen specifically, who went on to do like a gajillion things, like and with varying degrees of quality. But the Naked Gun, the first Naked Gun and Airplane stand out as like two of the kind of best of the best of that. And I guess for me, like, like maybe it's just the day and age. Like, we needed to have some sort of recognizable IP. Like, I feel like Naked Gun and Airplane have been in the last few years, kind of like resurfacing, like people sharing those like isolated clips and stuff from the shows or the movies. Um, and
Because it's
so like,
timelessly funny. Like it was
right, but
true to
it's like
itself. It's not on that
it's
trend of
the
self
kind of
awareness.
comedy, yeah, that we don't get at all today. And so like I read a lot about like them talking about how they like actively were trying to like reintroduce this kind of stuff to more modern audiences and all of that. And like so I think in part like I was taking it easier on the movie a little bit because of that. Like it would be hard to sell something with nothing recognizable, and just do this kind of awkward style, I guess, for like you said, cringe, and try to make it kind of work that way. I could see where that could be like a snag point. Um, but at the same time, like, I do hope that this is like a bright spot, like I said, for the studio comedy kind of stuff, that we get more of these, because again, like that's the best place to watch a movie like a comedy to me, is with a crowd. Like you said, it's the same thing with stand up. Like if you watch stand up special at home versus if you were there in that theater, you will have a better time at that theater. It's just how that works. And so for me, like I kind of like I was really split on it even afterwards. Like there was a lot of things in it. Like I'm just so like I genuinely like adore the original stuff. Like I love that so much. But one of the things that I really liked about the old stuff that this one did not have the same charm for was these old really, and like again, product of the time, I'm sure, but and like that's why they're different, is like these old practical sets that they had that were like clearly sets, and like so much of kind of the rudimentary nature of these kinds of movies, and like the old movie and even the show. Like the show to me is probably my favorite of all of the Naked Gun Police Squad stuff, but that to me was definitely not here. I remember saying to Adriana, like, I almost feel like they had too much money. Like it just had that kind of modern digital sheen to it that like looks like everything else, which I don't like in the current state of like just how movies generally look. And I kind of miss some of that more old school charm in that way, where a lot more of the gags were like set pieces, or like the one I showed you from the show is like the elevator scene where they step into an elevator where they're clearly not in an elevator, and then the doors shut and they swap out the background and then the doors open, and like funny bits happen that way. Like there is background bits and stuff like that, but I just missed that kind of rudimentary, like practical set nature of that kind of creation. And that was one thing that I would say that I was definitely missing from the new one.
I would say I think we talked about this where mostly because like I do work on major motion pictures as like a blue collar laborer, so I am in film sets all the time, and I look at a lot of studio backdrops, and it's really funny when they are literally taking a photo out of a window of a house and blowing it up on a giant piece of like canvas. Um, I did, and maybe I'm saying this not as like a weird okay cool flex kind of thing, but like uh what I'm getting at is I felt like I could notice like when they're in Pamela Anderson's apartment, especially I noticed, I guess, as I was like, oh, that really feels like a fake LA skyline backdrop like 2 feet outside the window. That was the only one again we talk about like on some of our other reviews were like, are you reaching because you want it to be that, or was it obvious? So anyways, yeah, I do see your point because yeah, the visual gags, especially when like the almost like the low quality of the older stuff did kind of retain this more nostalgic, earnest, kind of funny feeling. And it's tough to film a modern movie in like 8K,
Yeah.
without it feeling like a little too glossy or professional. And again, as somebody who works on a lot of stuff like streaming and contemporary pieces, when you're just dressing an IKEA apartment because it's 2025 and they're filming it in like the highest possible cameras with the best possible lighting, you do kind of start to see and feel it. Like even when they're in like a server room or wherever, like all the tech feels very like pristine. And again, maybe that's
Mhm.
to be a comment on the modern landscape of movies where everything is sleek and edgy and cool. Where yeah, in the older movies, nothing ever felt cool. It was always kind of janky and of the era, but this is of the era, like having electric cars that are, I think clearly to me, I'm guessing they're Hyundai Ionics, or a Hyundai electric car that they have debadged and done some stuff with, but having the villain, not just set pieces being like a little too modern, but even having the villain be like a Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk hybrid type is something
Mhm.
that I'm tiring of in media. But here, because it like they don't linger on it, I was enjoying it. But after a certain point, I was kind of like, oh, okay, I am starting to feel that too much nowadays, and it's hard to feel fresh. But it's right for the Naked Gun to lampoon something like that. But when media as a whole has been on that train for so long, it's like I don't know. So a lot of it worked, but yeah, when you talk about the earnest charm of the earlier movies, translating mostly, but not all the way. I think those are the things that I got hung up on. Was yeah, it does feel like a streaming show in 2025 for how like glossy and perfect it looks
Right.
in a lot of ways. And then yeah, the contemporary angles of like, what if Elon Musk was being investigated by a wackamamie private eye investigator?
Yeah.
um, but again, I wouldn't
Well,
say it's a con. Just took me a thing I noticed when comparing like
Well, to me, it's like it's going back and forth, right? Like, again, it's like if this was a different thing entirely, like if it wasn't the Naked Gun, then maybe like that's not something I'm thinking about, right? Like, I'm not thinking about that kind of like old school charm. And like, again, it's sort of this idea of like, to me, people will say like, well, it's not, it's bringing Naked Gun to a new audience. The old Naked Gun's fine. Like, it's really good. It's better for sure. I still think this one's like, it's better, I think, than I would say the sequels, the Naked Gun sequels that they did. But the
was it
first
Naked Gun
movie,
like one and a half or two and a
it was
half? They
two and
did
a
like the
half and then
fractions,
33 and a third or whatever.
three and a third,
Uh,
three and three quarters
yeah,
or something. Yeah, which
yeah,
again is clever. Fourth wall breaking like Deadpool. Uh,
yeah. Hilarious.
yeah,
But like,
literally it's like Deadpool.
I, I just can't, like, for me, it really, like, you have to justify that to me then, and like just to say like, well, we're bringing it to a modern audience, like, that's not a good enough excuse to me. Make something new then and bring that same feel and style. Again, like, I'm hopeful that maybe this is the start of something, like maybe this is the step we needed to, take to be able to do that. But like, I did do a bunch of like reading and stuff afterwards, and like one of the original pitches, and they do even a spoof of it in this movie, was like, to spoof a police procedural in this era feels like out of place, because it's not really something people really like it's watch anymore. It's not as prominent in
People
the
don't even like the police
cultural.
anymore.
Well, yeah, exactly. And like, to this movie's credit, like it does kind of
They
play,
address
like there's
that.
bits about yeah, like that's the thing. It's like they acknowledge it without making it be like, well, it was like, it's not a big deal. It's played for bits and gags that work, and it's not like some sort of overbearing, heavy-handed message. And but like it has, like, yeah, it has commentary on a bunch of things. Like one of my other favorite gags was like ponzi scheme.com arena, which is like
Yeah, a
making fun
friend
of
said crypto.
crypto.com
Yeah,
arena and stuff like that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
like
All
there's a
that
lot of little
lands.
things like that I really like. But yeah, like that was really kind of where all my polls came from, was that like if this movie just went off and like did its own thing, I probably would have loved it. But
Yeah,
because it is a Naked Gun movie, it is attached to that IP. I cannot, the movie, and it's not like my fault. Like we talk about expectations and stuff. The movie wants me to think about that. You used the name. You're rebooting, sequel, whatever they want to call it. They're doing that. So the fact, like, I'm bringing Naked Gun expectations to the table, and so the things I love about that, like some of it is certainly missing. Again, the spirit was there, but like I miss, again, that vibe and the look and the fact that like they're driving on back lots and stuff like that in the show and in the old movie. It's like those were really kind of funny, and again, it was just sort of like, yeah, it's of the time, but like that to me is not an excuse. Like I would have liked to have seen a bit more like unique style from it, I guess.
on that note, because it's funny, it's like I was trying to wrap up what you were saying about like the whole debate between rebooting a franchise for IP to get butts and seats. I do see why in an age where no comedies are being made, they did slap this as a Naked Gun, and then, it wasn't also like this was a pitched comedy called like the Clueless Cop or something, and then they
Right.
threw Naked Gun over top. Like this was built up as that, and I do think, I would say I'm the opposite point to you is. I get why they would do it this way, because it is from like the studio point, like they want a built-in audience, because it's hard to get a comedy out there nowadays, especially coming from Fantasia. Like you saw a lot of comedies, or at least a handful, right? Like at least that the dog one at the end, and it's like it's a tough crowd. So I kind of get that. But what I was going to talk about when you said like the schlockiness, I think one of my favorite bits in that episode of Police Squad we watched, you had to point out to me, because I was just kind of like in the vibe. I think we had a few drinks. Like it was good. It was good research time. Um, but like they're in the police station or something, and I swear to God, you're like, did you look out the window? And I'm like, what? I look at it was like the Swiss Alps, or it was Paris or something was
Yeah.
the backdrop. And I was like, damn. And again, this movie has a lot of smaller bits like that rounded out on a rewatch when you're so hyper focused on like I say the plot is the comedy in a way. Like the beat per beat is what gets you through the scene, and it's
Yeah.
less about what they're saying. Because even in that Police Squad, the recurring shoe shining character you're talking about, where he
Yeah.
does the detective work, and then yeah, when the priest shows up, it's like anything on. What is it like? Spiritual degradation or
The
nihilism?
afterlife or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah. And he's like, "Well, are we talking about yeah nihilism, or are we talking about more And like he breaks it down for him, and they just cut away like solid. Um, I do want to segue into kind of like the thing that I was kind of like the meat and potatoes that I feel like is worth. Well, we started it is the Seth MacFarlane of it all, where he is kind of, in my opinion, as like somebody who grew up with Family Guy, the guy who's best known for using untimely references, and a lot of newer Family Guy does the Marvel quippy stuff of being like, "Ooh, that was a timely reference," because they'll reference like an '80s or something show, and the '80s is now 40 years ago. The 2000s, like in this movie that they're referencing a lot of, 20 years ago, and in early like 2000s Family Guy, there'd be references to 60s, 70s, and 80s. Even like Ted, Flash Gordon's pivotal that movie.
Yeah.
But it introduced a whole generation like me to Flash Gordon, and like I went back to watch Flash Gordon because I loved his portrayal in the movie and how like that was pivotal to Ted. So it is kind of it's done with so much love for like old Hollywood, and not even like what you would call like high bar cinema old Hollywood, not like a Babylon like aren't movies fantastic kind of way, but just this way of like look at all this stuff that's kind of now being lost to time, because stuff even like this podcast coming out 2 weeks after the movie or whatever is so quickly turned over. Like people only care for a week or two max. So I do appreciate that even though it's not timeless, the references kind of come from that place of like loving where we've been as a society with technology and goofy media, because this is goofy media, goofy movie, not the Goofy movie, but yeah, it's yeah, super enjoyable. There was a few bits which I want to get into um that maybe didn't work because they were like again that McFarlane charm where they're referencing something. And I love this because Adriana, as one of her top bits was when, and the only reason why I don't think I love this bit was when there's like that well into the movie, and it's like that second act low point, right before
Yeah.
the finale, when Liam Neeson's having a argument with Pamela Anderson, their relationships in turmoil, but it's more so in turmoil more so than like the actual reasoning that she was like investigating her, the murder, but it's in turmoil because she unplugged or plugged in his TiVo, his TV recording device that was very popular in like the early aughts, and
Plugged it into the internet.
to the internet to update it, which essentially got rid of all his old copies of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he starts listing off like great episodes that he'll never be able to watch again. And for Adriana, that landed super hard. And I was like, okay, this is where I'm dragging in the comedy. But then later on, he's like, you ever heard of Miranda rights? That's why he's walking free. You didn't read him his Miranda rights. And he goes, Miranda? No, she's not the writer. It's Carrie. And he starts doing like a Sex and the City bit. And I, as a Sex and the City fan, as you could clearly tell, was like I think that was the part I actually audibly went, ha! And like popped at. I could almost feel people be like, oh, geez, that guy's really into Sex and the City. So yeah, it can be hit or miss. But yeah, when that one part was kind of tied into that second act fall, like it's comedic throughout. It's always swinging for a joke, even in the descent. But yeah, I'm glad Seth MacFarlane had his hand in this. I don't know other
Oh, I
comedic voices.
disagree completely, dude. I thought Family Guy was good when I was 12, 10. And it was like, this was my sense of like edgy, funny, like, oh, I can't believe I get to watch this kind of humor as a child. I thought Ted was fine. Like, it's a fun enough movie. I think I just like, I've never like had an affinity for the way like even Family Guy as I've gotten older. Like, it's really, to me, it's just cutaway gags, which are like pretty easy to, you don't really have to worry about making anything cohesive because you can just cut away and do a completely random bit and it doesn't have to matter. And so like it's easier to do that way, and like it's not that they can't be funny, it's just that like again kind of to me is like I don't know, bottom of the barrel's too harsh, but like it's easier enough to churn out. Like it's different than like kind of the longevity in something like The Simpsons or
Yeah.
whatever, where
When
they're
I
a bit more
say
cohesive.
the McFarlane stuff too, I'm not so much referencing Family Guy as much as I would say like I'm trying to more reference like Ted, I guess. Because there's not a ton of like films he's been a part of, but like that kind of like nostalgic, almost like dumb glow that he loves to bring to characters like that. Because yeah, I would say like with the exception of like the montage for the snowman, there really isn't cutaways per se, but it is kind of like they are trying to, because he also like American Dad. If you're like a real
Mhm.
McFarlane fan, I guess like American Dad was a show that was kind of like Family Guy light or 2.0, and they were struggling to kind of figure out their niche. But once they just kind of committed to their absurd characters and building around that, and like how a lot of those characters will be like oddly obsessed with like a band or oddly obsessed with like something, but it's more so the referential stuff. Like reference comedy is tough. It's an immediate land for a lot of people or an immediate dislike. And now that we don't really have, like I was saying earlier, monoculture where we're all watching the same program scheduled stuff and everyone's interests are more niche and hyper focused to like YouTube content or Instagram, TikTok, etc., it's tough. So I see why he has to go back to reference older property. Um, but with that in mind, I think the thing with a reference comedy, and it could be something that makes or breaks, is like I was a huge fan of the scary movie franchise, especially, because I love Scream, etc. But after that third movie, because again, society was evolving and we are losing the monoculture towards the later 2010s or early 2010s even, everything that is reference is less likely to land. So by like the fourth or fifth movie of the scary movie franchise, you start to really feel like like the plots are also just like spoofing or parodying other plots from other movies. And when the third movie I think was like Signs and 8 Mile was kind of the bit, and that was pretty good. But by the fifth movie, it's like they're spoofing Mama, the Guillermo del Toro horror film that here in Toronto at a studio I work at, which is cool. But it's like that even saying that, like I don't think you haven't seen Mama, right? The
Yeah,
Guillermo
is
del
that
Toro
with
movie.
like the little weird
The
tail
little
thing or
weird
something?
girls, and then there's like this like ghastly figure that kind of haunts them. But again, it's just like by the time you get to a fifth movie that is so based on reference humor at the death of monoculture, it's so hard to make that work for everybody. So it is tough. It is emblematic of like why these types of comedies and parody movies have died off because you can't really account for an audience seeing a major blockbuster. I think this was your thing at the theater. Was like instead of a Naked Gun reboot about like police procedurals or going the rabbit hole of superhero dark comedy like The Boys, they should have just been parodying the action blockbuster subgenre that's been popping up. That's like extreme stunts, like parody a Tom Cruise type character and do like a Mission Impossible style parody where it's like, the world's going to end unless you do all this crazy stuff. Even saying that out loud, it might be a better bit in this movie than like a feature length parody. But yeah, I guess that's just kind of my thoughts generally on like why the parody that's so referential, it did die out. Like you can see why it died out when you find a joke in this movie that didn't land.
Well, I think the reason they died out was because there was 70 fucking trillion of them that came out, like,
Not
and
another teen movie, disaster movie,
yeah, like
superhero movie.
I'm so proud of myself that even at a young age I was like, these are fucking dumb and like
Not
repet
this
like
guy.
I checked out of those like so fast. Like I think the first scary movie was kind of funny, and then I don't remember anything about any of those. And I know I watched a bunch of those other ones, but like I couldn't tell you. And like I think that became a thing where they were just like, yeah, overdoing everything,
Every
and
genre was
and
not
kind of
safe.
killed it because people were just out, like didn't care anymore, because yeah, like it was like you can't do those too much, and they just mined the shit out of them and then overdid them. And so like this movie I think was good in that like it didn't like it wasn't only just consistently referencing other movies. Like I think there was three like specific moments and bits that really kind of built off of other things, like the opening very what is it, the Dark Knight, and then there was my Mission Impossible bit that I liked, um But like you mentioned too, like saying about lampooning like the more modern stuff, that wasn't my idea. It was David Zucker who created, Airplane and The Naked Gunner. He was one of the three of them that did it. He's still around, and he made a pitch for the movie, and it was along those lines because he's like, you can't do a police procedural. Like it just doesn't matter in this kind of day and age anymore. So it was kind of irrelevant. So because it's Paramount, his pitch and this, like I luckily I didn't read this till after, but I'm obviously biased towards this idea where he said it should be called Naked Impossible, and just like parodying these kinds of big set piece actions, and like, riffing on kind of the more modern state of things. And like that to me again would have been like, who knows if the movie would have been funnier or better, but at least on setup premise to me is more interesting because it's a bit more relevant. And like I don't really care for the old callback things, like for the sake, like again, even in that like packed theater we saw it at the first time, Adriana was the only one that laughed at the Buffy thing. And like include whatever you want, like that will always happen, like that's just the nature of comedy, and especially comedies like this. But like yeah, I don't think it was necessary. And I think like to me, like the other thing that bothered me was that, like again, however much Seth MacFarlane actually was involved in the process, but like I didn't like, there was that one gag where he comes up with a fake name, and it's completely just like, I remember that bit as a kid from Family Guy where he
Family
goes,
Guy.
what's your name? And he goes, P, tear, and then a griffin flies by, and he goes, Griffin. And so, like, they don't do that. They don't play it. It's not the exact same, but he makes up just a really stupid, implausible name,
I
which
do
was
like the
like,
commitment to the bit though. Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
that was
yeah.
a joke early on, and I think you and I both looked at each other and went, "Oh, this is so Family Guy." But yeah, like through the rest of the movie, it's like the last name was a fat guy eating spaghetti, so he's like, whatever first name was, like it was like
Yeah,
cocktail
they had like a
waiter,
real
and it was like
cherry, whatever,
it
yeah.
was like
Fat
big
bozo eating
Dumbo, yeah,
spaghetti.
fat bozo eating spaghetti, and then for the rest of the movie, it's like Mrs. Spaghetti, how nice to see you again. And every
Yeah.
time I was reminded of that bit, it was almost a purposefully not great bit because it keeps getting brought back and the doubling down of it that I was like prime. And then I think later when there's like more, they're like romancing each other. There's like that tension there. He says her full name. He's like, oh, Barbara Bozo Spaghetti. You've really got my
Yeah.
eye. I was like, Kai, I pop for that, and I think and that's kind of the thing is like what I want to differentiate on like the nitpicks of like the comedy, nitpicking comedy, how fun, but the best bits are like standalone. They avoid references,
Uh-huh.
and this movie's packed of original bits. Like even if that one like again felt like a Family Guy joke, it wasn't referencing another media. Um,
Uh-huh.
I absolutely love, and again, this is like the third movie that has a big conversation, or like touches on at least police brutality in 2025. Seeing Bo's
Yeah.
Afraid, and then seeing Weapons recently. It's like that's in both those movies, and sure enough, it's here through like the body cam footage as a gag. And I never felt more seen when it's just an uninterrupted montage through the body cam footage of him trying to find a bathroom after eating some terrible chili dogs from a gas station, but he just loves them. Like even for this, I was like, I should have a chili dog on standby. Like I popped for that. Like it's absurd, but it was just like they were coming up with original jokes. As much as we've spent the last like 20 minutes harping on the referencing and the Seth MacFarlane of it, back to like what we're talking about, like it's a nonstop barrage of bits is like the more original ones, the ones that are more visually based, where they're not spelling it out for you with the dialogue. Like one of my favorite bits, I had an interview. It's like, please take a chair, and she goes, no thanks, I have many at home.
Yeah.
I started crying, I think, because I was like, I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting like exposit some dialogue scene, and I think I don't even remember what they said after that. I think I was just trying to get my composure back from like snickling to myself for like almost 2 minutes straight. I think you looked over at me, my eyes were bloodshot. I was like, just I wasn't expecting it.
Because you
So
were holding it in too much too, which was
yeah,
like,
part of the problem. Yeah, because we always talk about what not to do, and I didn't want to be the one guy being like, ha, 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 because I was the only guy. Everybody in the theater, it was like you'd hear like a gasp, like, But Yeah. So, anyways, yeah, I
One of
again, I
my
popped.
favorites, some of my favorite stuff was I love the coffees, the constant coffees
Oh
being brought to them
yeah,
in frame. And like, like that was a bit that went on for a while that every time it happened, I just was enjoying like more and more. And then like I think the hardest I laughed the first time was when he's talking to Cody Rhodes plays the bartender. Cody Rhodes is a wrestler and
yeah,
he's the bartender with a terrible wig, by the way. Which again,
yeah.
I love that part.
Part of
Like
the charm.
that's in
Yeah,
the rudimentary nature that I kind of dug, and that was like my favorite part was that it was like, and it also like. It's they hide it mostly, but you can still see it's like Cody Rhodes actually has this giant neck tattoo like right here, and it's his like logo basically like for his wrestler, and like they didn't even cover it up, it's just there, and I like enjoyed like again all of that was like contributing to the moment for me. I really enjoyed that part. But yeah, like that bit where he goes, "So you're Tony Royland's brother," like that sent me to the moon. I laughed really hard at that.
yeah.
Um, and
Yeah,
then yeah,
because the
there's just
setup for
like
that
steady bits.
is like when you gunned him down in the streets, he's like that could be anybody. Again,
Yeah,
on
that
the
could
police
have been
radio, he's like, oh, that's
thousands of people, and
he's
he's
like
like
an
he was
innocent
running
man.
away. Yeah,
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 he's
yeah.
like an innocent man who's running away. He's like, or who is surrendered. He's like, that could be hundreds of people, and then he narrows it down. It's like that could be tens of people, and eventually, like, he was a white guy, and he's like, oh yeah, so you're, and he gets the name, and it
Yeah, so
was,
you're Tony
yeah,
Royland's brother.
dude,
And yeah,
yeah,
like Liam Neeson was really good in it. I think like
yeah, very
again, like
good.
contrasting it to Leslie Nielsen, like again, like probably did as good as he could in such like a he plays his son, but like
Which is a
very
bit.
loosely connected. Yeah, they play it, and I'm like glad like they kind of I felt like the way they handled that was like good. Like I don't like when you try to either try like too hard. It's just kind of navigating it can be difficult. And like the gag that's in the trailer too, like of them all taking a knee at their dead dad's shrines in the police station was funny.
Monologuing and crying, and then they get to the O.J. Simpson character from those
Yeah,
early movies, and his son's like, "Hell no!" He just walks out, and that's the whole.
yeah,
And I feel like even in the credits, like the credits are like a huge gag in these, but like even if it wasn't a gag, it was naturally funny that it's like they would have to give O.J. Simpson's son a character, this, and he was there for
yeah,
like
yeah,
hell no and walked out like.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
super strong. I think like even what you're talking about casting wise, I like Pamela Anderson in this. Nice to see her doing movies again, and it's also like I was saying, like age appropriate love interest is kind of nice to see in Hollywood now. Like now that Tom Cruise is like in his 60s and he's not going for like a 23-year-old. Like maybe it's almost unrealistic, but yeah, I like that Liam Neeson and Pam Anderson seem like a cute old couple. And I don't know if it's marketing, but apparently they're together outside of the movie. So knowing that going in, I was like, oh, it kind of brings a bit of a smile on my face knowing that it was a charming movie to work on, at least for that, and charming in the theater experience. But yeah, as we are riffing on Happy Gilmore 2 earlier about it being like almost all cameos, the cameos they have in this between that wrestler and the big one, Al Yankovic, I thought was like tastefully done. There's a post-credit scene where Nick Fury asks him to join the event. No, I'm kidding. Where Weird Al comes back up again at the Doomsday Bunker, and yeah, everything really kind of pays off. Like if you've seen the movie and I'm talking about it, like I mean, people might disagree with that, like, oh, they just threw him in for fun. But of course, like an out of
He's
touch
been in
billionaire.
like he was in a lot of them. I can't remember if he was in every one, but he was for sure I think referenced at least in every one, and then was like definitely in oh god they blend. I do not like the second and third ones near as much, but he's I think in both of those like actually. So that's like a gag that kind of
Oh,
carries
okay.
over.
Because it was good. Because my immediate thought was, yeah, of course, an out of touch billionaire who wanted to like essentially destroy the world and bunker down or whatever, like the end of the world sweepstakes. His peak version of comedy would just be Weird Al Yankovic, especially with this movie being, like I said, like the humor can be a little bit dated, referentially speaking. And yeah, like when he popped up, I was like, that's hilarious. Like the only other person that fills that space for me would probably be like a Carrot Top reference, which is supremely more Family Guy in my mind. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad they showed some restraint with some of those cameos, like because they were subtle, and if you knew them, then they were great. Again, proof you don't have to have a direct to streaming movie that is all cameos. Like in Happy Gilmore 2, Eminem's in it, and it's just like, damn, like why? Because the fan base of Adam Sandler probably also loves Slim Shady.
Right.
Speaking about myself, but just like as a general note, like I wasn't as perturbed watching The Naked Gun when there's cameos and even the dated references, like all generally worked. I think all in all, I really did enjoy The Naked Gun much more than I thought I would. I wasn't as dour going into it as you were, being like, oh, I can't wait for this legacy sequel reboot. You know, I was pretty excited. I think I saw the trailer for it with Renata in the theater, and I was like, oh, we have to see that. And she kind of looked at me like, really? I was like, yeah, yeah. Like the first, like the originals were so good. Like I would love to see how they do it, even if it was a flop. I was excited to go. It's kind of like in NASCAR. You can't look away from the crash. You're not there for that, but when it happens, you're like, oh wow. So like War of the Worlds with Ice Cube, you know, that's so bad it's good. That was the worst case scenario. But then after watching that, I'm like, thank God, this movie's competently done and does land more than it misses. And yeah, I'm glad to see it's out there and it's doing moderately well.
Mhm. The one thing I wanted, like, it's not that I didn't like it, was fine, I guess, but I really wish they had someone else as the main villain. Like, I don't know, like, exactly what I wanted in terms of, like, I just wanted someone more, like, like, maybe dial it a little bit more. Like, he's hamming it up and they have good bits, but it's like, I just felt like that was a part that I was, like, lacking as a foil to Liam Neeson a bit. Like, I don't know. I
like you
just
would want
wanted
like a
something
Doctor
like,
Evil type.
yeah, like, well, just something more memorable, I guess. Like he's very much like and again, like on paper, like plot wise, I guess he's a mustache twirling like evil villain. That's not the problem. I just like the performance and the character. I guess I just wanted to feel like a bit more memorable and stuff. And it's not that like even like honestly, that's not a strong suit necessarily of the like the Naked Gun movies either. But like just for this kind of character and like to get these kind of like this cast together, like I feel like there was just like a missed opportunity just to like have someone that's just like maybe hamming it up even a little bit more, just whatever in that regard. But like I just wanted someone, I guess, to be more memorable that way. Um, but like again, it's kind of like I said, it's 85 minutes. It's going to be one of the shortest like mainstream, or whatever broadly released kind of movies in a while. And like yeah, it's super easy to get into, and I think like again my ambition is like I hope this doesn't spawn the kind of era of just crap, but like I hope this like now the opportunity and like I read I think yesterday that Neeson said like they don't think there will be a sequel and stuff like that, and I kind of hope that's true because like I don't need to see necessarily like more of this. I would
Yeah,
like to see like okay, if you're gonna play it, you've reintroduced this kind of comedy to a more modern audience. Um, like let's try and do something with it now that's a little bit more like make this more relevant than just kind of the callback and like you said too about the like need of the IP and stuff like again, there's no point really in nitpicking over it, but like I do not believe that the Naked Gun IP is anything that like the modern audience that they want to turn out because like you can't be like, we're cashing in on the goodwill of the Naked Gun IP to get people that have never seen those movies and understand that kind of humor to see a new thing. So it's just like to me it was kind of like unjustifiable, and I think like in this era where word of mouth can really carry a movie, like if you made this even a bit more relevant and like, like I think it's week over week has been good so far, but it could have been better for sure. And I feel like in the like, in the same year that something like Sinners came out, right? There is still an appetite and people will go see it if your movie is good enough to justify it. And I think maybe if this was a bit more relevant and kind of like played with a different setup than again that police procedural, like it lampooned more the modern state of things a little bit more, that it could have gotten that word of mouth and really picked up even more. But I still think it's a modest enough success that like hopefully like modest enough like it's great for studio comedies in this day and age, but it wasn't kind of the obvious huge win that I really wanted it to be.
I do feel like if the bad guy was a like David Zaslav style CEO or like Netflix CEO that was like, finally we're gonna close movie theaters once we've murdered enough people in a movie theater, like something like that, you would have like, I'm on board finally. The bad guy's
Well, but
big
like I mean that's
streaming
pretty
CEO.
niche to me, but like yeah, like
Yeah,
doing
yeah,
any
that's the bit.
like
That's the joke.
the Elon part of it, right? Like I feel like again, like you, like I'm wildly overdone with like tech bro corporate owners and the
Yeah.
villain of everything, like even like normal kind of like act like I say normal in the sense of like they're not trying to be comedy, it's like a straight action or whatever. Like that's such an overdone bit that like I feel like they didn't play with that enough. Like it was like he felt very like in terms of action, it felt very generic. Like they didn't really like really lampoon because again, even the main plot thing, I don't know if this was intentional or done like with that level of awareness, but like it's straight up just the Kingsman plot which like is fine, but I felt like the movie didn't really acknowledge it or play with that, so that which leads me to think it wasn't necessarily
Even a
intentional,
cameo
but
from
like
Eggsy would have clarified that. You know, if he was like, "What,
right.
what do you say, mate?" and then they just fucking slam him in a locker like that.
Yeah, yeah,
Family
yeah.
Guy quality. You know, not cutaway, but insert shot of like,
Right.
you know, we're
But
stealing
like
your
yeah,
bit.
like
You know.
that kind of made me think like, oh, maybe they didn't intend this, but like again, it didn't have like where Doctor Evil's plots were always like they fit that kind of era of the Bond villain, you know, trying to do these like crazy over the top bits. And this just felt very much like if you took the same, like, I mean, it was used like in Kingsman. It's the same kind of like evil guy plot plan. And it's the exact same thing that they don't do anything different with. So, like, that's just,
Do
again,
you
another
think
opportunity I thought was missed.
my final question on that exact note, kind of like Austin Powers coming out in the early 2000s, where they do frame him as like a guy frozen in time kind of thing. Do you think this Naked Gun would have been better if they made a 2025 movie that took place in like that 70s, 80s era, you know? Like if this was a time period comedy, or do you think that sense alone is already tanking butts and seats mentality?
Well, yeah, I think that was sort of their challenge of like again, this is why I'm kind of like so split on it in execution is that like for example, they do the same car shots like of the noir, like they're driving
Yeah.
along and this music plays, but the fact that like they do that and it just looks modern, like I didn't enjoy that and like it just seemed kind of like a pull direction where they're like it has the music that makes you think it's like this brooding you know noir like I literally think like LA noir kind of like
And there's
old
also like
school setting.
daytime LA,
Right. And
you know,
it's
and they
so
didn't do like that
shiny and
obvious driving
modern.
shot. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, like, for me, it's just like,
But he hit
that
a
to me
cyclist.
is
That's
like,
why it's funny.
which, like, again, they
Two
do
or three
gags
times.
similar to that, right? Like, he
Yeah.
always pulls into the scene and runs over the garbage can or something in
Just
the old ones.
needlessly.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And so, like, again, like to me, but like that's why I like again, I think they were torn in the execution. They're like, well, if we just do this old one, it'll turn kids off because they don't like the old feeling or whatever. Like I don't know what exact, but it felt like that kind of studio ish calculation of it all. And like I think that to me is what I found again like kind of disappointing of like if you're gonna be the Naked Gun then like yeah I would have preferred like something in the vein of like the Nice Guys, right? Like have that
Yeah.
old school settings and like it really works. Like I adore that movie. And I think like just having something more unique for it would work a lot better. But this just like in a way feels sort of throwaway. Like I certainly don't think this has the same sort of like it won't linger in the public consciousness the way that the Naked Gun has or Airplane has even before that. Like I just don't see that kind of longevity, and I think it's because it's pulling this sort of double duty because like it's sort of new but it's a lesser version, it's a lesser imitation of a more modern take on something old as opposed to something uniquely kind of their own. And again, where something like Austin Powers or those old movies I feel like really stand out, I don't feel like this will have that same effect. But again, maybe like ideally it's the launching pad for the next one that they do with this style of humor maybe that will be the one that can stand out, and they just needed to do this, or they felt they needed to do this to kind of get us there.
Yeah, I definitely think that like the shelf life of this movie in today's society is definitely like what you said. It'll be a movie that if a friend or two of mine at work has seen, it will be a great day at work to like bounce and riff and talk about it. The way people again used to endlessly quote like Anchorman,
Hmm.
but just in the state of theaters and streaming and all that, like it's hard that I have such a diverse group of male coworkers, and I'd be lucky if one of 20 of them saw the movie because people aren't going. And I think even now, ashamedly, I would say like I bet this will end up on streaming by Christmas on Paramount Plus, and that would be the perfect movie for me to put on at my mom or dad's house because like the comedy for them would definitely land. And that's the cycle of the movie. Summer comes out, a handful of close buddies see it, you joke about it, you laugh about it, you maybe are reminded of it by like hopefully a predecessor years later, and then by Christmas you've recommended it or put it out to show people a few times. Because we even talked about like at the bar after with everybody from Fantasia, like what was your favorite comedy movie? And it's like that's a really disarming question because favorite movie's hard to answer without being pretentious or letterboxy or whatever. But a favorite comedy, and I even like sitting there with my Bucky's hat, my mullet, I was like Talladega Nights. I think I watch that every year, and unfortunately, like this Naked Gun movie's good, but I think I would still prefer to go back and watch the old one because I feel like that's more niche and obscure and like let me show you this gem. Where this is good, it's modern, and that's probably why I would show it to like my parents who don't go to the theaters as much to be like, yeah, this is pretty good. Where they've probably seen the Naked Gun more because it was just of their era. But yeah, all in all, I really enjoyed the movie. It landed far more than it missed, and I couldn't be much happier with it. Like I do think it had an opportunity to do far worse. But I
Hmm.
do agree with a
For
lot of
sure.
your gripes and complaints of certain things. But yeah, I think for like a 2025 comedy in theaters, I'm grateful. I'm grateful because yeah, I hope like you said, it inspires more to come in this genre, in this style, playing bits straight, reincorporating bits. I feel like comedy is yeah, not only is it streaming, but it's just like Netflix stand-up comedian specials.
Yeah.
We've stopped laughing at the same content as a society, and it's nice to see that there's something trying to do that, even if it's not a perfect film. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, one of the things you
mic
said
drop.
there
That's
that
all I
I
got.
want to hone in on was the Naked Gun. Like you talked about that you like, yeah, you would show the old one. Like I would just put the original on before this, and I think that's the difference between something original and like I hate to, well, I don't hate because I do believe it's what it is, but like the Naked Gun movie is a great movie. This is more Naked Gun content. You know what I mean? Like it's in that
Oh,
vein of like
oh,
it is. It's not that it's not
Martin
funny. It's not that
Scorsese over here.
it's just more well, but like do you am I wrong? Like it's not if
I,
it's in the
I get what
spirit
you
of
mean. I get
Naked
what you
Gun,
mean.
like in the way that like I wouldn't say Austin Powers is Naked Gun content, right? Like it is its own thing. It has a unique feel. It has a style to it. It is
Its
what
own
it is.
farmable IP, baby.
Well,
Let's get a
now, yeah,
reboot of
like we're
that
gonna be getting
next.
that soon again, probably. I wouldn't be stunned. It depends how much of a box office pariah Mike Myers is. But like this doesn't stand out in any particular regard. It is just more. And maybe that's okay. And like this is true of sequels kind of writ large. Like I would say this is kind of true for the second and third Naked Guns. There's some really great bits in them, but like as a whole, like I just felt the laugh ratio was not there for those other ones. But it's kind of more in that vein. Like that's why I would always just watch the Naked Gun instead of two or three, or the Naked Gun now. So like for me, like it's again it's just the IP nature of it all is like if this movie was just something of its own, like even like we talked about the visual look and the like the noir elements that they tried to incorporate, but then like I've heard interviews where Akiva was talking about how I was trying to make the movie cinematic, and I'm like I don't think it should because then it just I think that contributes to the sameness of that it all is kind of like blending in on. So for me, I think that really is kind of where like the fact that I like it is as good as this could have done for me for sure. I just would wish I loved it. And like I said, if it's the catalyst for comedies returning and it becomes like a much more kind of a milestone moment and is like a transitionary movie for that kind of thing, then like I'll always appreciate it as that. But yeah, it really depends on like the legacy of what this is, and if it is just a blip that goes away and doesn't lead to anything. But like I said, I hope it's marks, a kind of return to the studio comedy that we've not been getting in theaters for a long time. So,
Well said.
but I
I
mean, yeah, I don't know if you have any other closer bits for that, but I think like,
I was debating on closing out by saying, on second thought, I will take that chair and try to pick up my very heavy wood desk chair and like in frame walk out with it. But instead, I
well,
guess
we
yeah,
didn't talk about this, but I could technically on your hat there, I could have just said, "Hey, Brandon, nice beaver." Which is a bit from the original as well, and that was the whole popcorn bucket, which never came to Cineplex. It was only at Landmark apparently.
I know it's
But
brutal. Even if this one they did like a turkey because like that was like their equivalent in this one, right?
uh
Where it was like I like my turkey a little raw. Like, well, I hope salmonella's down for yeah. But
yeah, yeah, their dirty talk with all of that.
oh, so good. And we didn't bring it up, but if you see the movie, one of my favorite bits, which I didn't think landed for you, because like, oh, it just feels like it's an Austin Power reference. I was like, I want more of this. Bring back Austin Powers was, yeah, the thermal scope when they're trying to
Yeah,
cook the turkey after all the turkey sexual innuendo. I was like, God help me. I that was compounding laughs for me, and yeah, like I
yeah, because
said,
they do
I
like three different cutaways to that, like, and they're in
yeah,
different scenarios, or
and the
three or
dog's
four
like
maybe.
yeah,
Yeah,
biting the turkey baster, but it looks like he's letting the dog lick him off while Pamela Anderson's like petting the dog, and yeah, it's great. It's debaucherous in the right ways. It's perfectly offensive, just enough. Last little bit, I do have to wrap here, but yeah, is the needle drop of the Black Eyed Peas and the Black Eyed Pea reference. 2025,
well,
one
the
of my
lack
favorite.
of Black Eyed Peas needle drop technically.
Well, and that's it. Is like I like how even the most recent episodes of South Park, like they're like, oh, the offensiveness and like the way culture has been reacting, you can get away with being more juvenile and saying certain words, like, and love that they brought back the word retarded, and in this movie they comment on that, and then when they have the opportunity, while they're doing some very silly stuff later, when they're getting a little crazy, they did not drop the part of the song that goes "Let's get retarded" and hear it.
Well, they
Um,
play Fergalicious, which genuinely to me was like, I was kind
Missed
of pissed.
opportunity.
Oh, like not
Yeah,
even I was like, you fucking. It was right there because yeah, they do the reference at the beginning where the villain goes. He's like, oh yeah, my club where the rich elite of the city can get together, and
you can
as
do
the
and say
Black Eyed Peas
anything.
once said. Get retarded up in here or whatever. It's like
Yeah,
they plant that seed, and then there's like, yes, this action sequence where I like was primed to drop that song, and like God knows why. Like the Black Eyed Peas, it's not on Spotify. I feel like the only version you can find of that now is like on YouTube.
yeah,
But like my thing was, okay, if you weren't going to do that there, you made me rethink of that bit because you played Fergalicious. So if you
yeah.
had just done a completely different song, like from a different band or like people not involved with the Black Eyed Peas, it wouldn't have re-clicked to me. But the fact that you played that and I was like, oh my God, how did you not use the song that you referenced earlier? Like I
Especially
genuinely
because
was
they
like
are like
fucking
the king of
pissed.
callbacks. Like they were bringing back the spaghetti
Yeah.
thing. Like they set up so many callbacks to the earlier jokes, which always worked. So that could have been the highest payoff, especially because it was like the climactic action
Yeah.
scene, where he's doing a tactical reload and thing and essentially knocking people out by throwing his ammunition at him like a ninja. Because
Yeah,
it's
ejecting the mags.
it's pretty retarded, but it's awesome, and I loved it. And I think like it's funny because again, talking about like how do you do a scene in 2025 where a cop has to start shooting civilians in the street to maintain the control, especially after there's a bit earlier like, oh, I've shot hundreds of innocent people in the street. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
and then they do this like very Matrixy kung fu, very Kingsman kind of choreographed scene where stuff's flying around, and it's outlandish. They crank it to 11. It's fun, but yeah, that needle drop was enjoyable, but they did miss like the pivotal opportunity to play that song and really solidify that, yes, in fact, the phrase and borderline slur retard has come back into the zeitgeist once more.
Well,
Um,
my big campaign for the end of this is if they release the Naked Gun retarded cut, I'll buy that in 4K Blu-ray and we'll buy it and give it away. We'll do a giveaway for it if they
yeah,
release the
I,
retarded
I
cut of
would,
the
I
Naked
would, I
Gun.
would buy 5, and the only way you can enter that contest is you have to comment the word on our most recent post. So
Yeah.
we'd have like 100 comments being like retard, retard, and then eventually pick 5 people. But yeah, on that note, to close out, I would say, if you're in a movie theater, don't be afraid to get a little retarded in there and laugh out loud at jokes. Enjoy it wholeheartedly. But if it's a funny joke and you enjoyed it, don't repeat the joke very loudly several times to your buddy. He was in the theater with you. That's annoying. So, on behalf of all
We all
audiences
heard the
everywhere,
punchline. We don't need to hear you. Just tell us the punchline right after it happened.
yeah, save that moment for like months after to give shelf life to the movie. But yeah, on behalf of audiences everywhere, please don't do that. Thanks for listening, and go check out Naked Gun.